Over the past week, there's been a lot of updates for New World. We got a few minutes of gameplay footage showing off the updated visuals and combat, several hands-on first impression articles from gaming sites, and an official blog update on player housing. Some pretty interesting stuff in there, and I might cover it in future videos, but today I want to focus on something else. In particular, this article, How Amazon Plans to Blow Up MMOs with New World, and specifically, part of the article where this idea of them bringing back open world full loot PvP was hinted at. Let me say that again. They might bring back open world hardcore PvP. A brief history here. So last year during alpha testing, New World was an open world survival game with full loot PvP. No matter where you were, what your level, other players could fight you, and if you died, they could steal your stuff. Then this past January, they officially revealed a shift in direction, removing the open world PvP and replacing it with an opt-in toggle, saying that the game now had more emphasis on PvE. Since announcing those changes, there's been a fairly vocal uproar from players who enjoyed the game's original, more hardcore PvP focus, resulting in New World's community hubs being mostly negative in tone, and recent New World YouTube videos getting heavily downvoted. Now, apparently, they might bring it back. I want to dive into this stuff and talk about it in depth, but first, I'd like you to sit back for a minute, grab yourself a drink, and enjoy this word from today's sponsor. Thank you. Today's video is being sponsored by Curology. They provide customized, tailor-made skincare products. So growing up, I had quite a bit of acne, especially in my teens and early 20s. You can actually see, if you look real close, there's a bit of scarring that I have on my cheeks and forehead and stuff. I don't really have an acne problem anymore, but I think growing up with it absolutely made me think more about caring for my skin in general. So what Curology offers is these personalized skincare products tailored to what you need. So like, for example, for my kit, I went to their website, I did the short questionnaire, just answering some questions about my skin and my skincare history, and then uploaded a photo for them to just see, what I'm working with here. And then from there, what they do is they will team you up with a dermatology provider who's gonna go over your past history and info, and then kind of put together a skincare package for your needs. So for me, I got the cleanser to keep my skin clean, this moisturizer to, moisturize, and then this is actually the special formula that was made just for me. They'll make this combination based on whatever you need, and then you just basically go through this routine, and I've been using it for a couple weeks now, and it's definitely, my skin's feeling better. Just in general, taking care of yourself is a good idea, and it's something I'm definitely thinking a lot more of in recent years. So if you guys are interested in checking out Curology yourself, go ahead and check out that link in the description below. If you use it, they'll actually send you your first bottle for free. You'll just have to pay the $4.95 for shipping. So thanks to Curology for sponsoring this video. Let's get into it. Lots of interesting stuff to cover here. This article actually touches on a few things that I really want to dive into. And so the main theme of the article was how Amazon is looking to step in and shake up the games industry. Then it goes into some detail on what they're looking to deliver with New World and the tech that powers it, saying how Amazon's significant server resources allow them to deliver real-time physics-based combat at a massive scale by offloading a lot of calculations from users' computers to the cloud. And that's all well and good, although it's not anything we haven't heard before. And truth is, players are less concerned with where game calculations are running and more concerned about the experience that the game provides. So, what is New World going to do to set itself apart? Well, according to game director Scott Lane, there are three things: the art style, the combat, and wars and invasions. Scott says, "I think these three features will put us in this other bracket of MMO that really hasn't been done yet." So let's break this down here. First, starting with the art style. Cool, but look, no game sticks around because of its art style, or particularly players don't stick around just because of the art style. The gameplay and the systems are 100% more important. I mean, it's a nice part of the overall package, and absolutely no disrespect to the artists. These are very talented people working really hard, and it's a pretty special thing to be able to create this visually distinct and interesting world, and it is no doubt an important piece of the overall package. But again, it's the gameplay that matters. This isn't a painting. people stick around for the gameplay and the experience that the game delivers. So, what about the gameplay? It looks pretty good. New World has an action combat system that has been said many times is heavily inspired by Dark Souls. So the game is going to have this true skill-based action combat that actually requires you to aim and physically hit your attacks. There's no hard or soft lock targeting. Your ranged and melee abilities need to actually physically connect to do damage. Now, we've yet to see a good large-scale take on this sort of gameplay. Most games with this style of combat are fairly small in scale. New World is talking about server sizes of up to 1,000 players in one massive open world. That's pretty big, and if done right, I think that experience with this kind of combat in a world surrounded by hundreds of other players is a good idea. And in fact, from the recently released gameplay videos, we learned that combat in New World is basically about picking weapons to fit a playstyle. So each weapon in the game has a light and heavy attack, as well as 3 abilities that you can use. And there's weapon swapping bound to keys 1, 2, and 3. So you can pick 3 weapons, each with 2 attacks and 3 abilities, which sounds like a lot of variety and flexibility. We also know that there's going to be this weapon skill tree that allows you to specialize your playstyle even further. For example, using a sword and shield, you could choose to go tanky, absorbing some damage for your team, or you can be this in-your-face Vanguard style fighter dealing damage. I think there's a lot of promise with what we've seen and we've heard about from the gameplay in this game so far. Now, the last big pillar is the wars. This is where their PvP content is gonna focus on the current version of the game. Wars are these 50 versus 50 battles where companies and players work together to try to gain control of a territory and its settlements. Now, with the action combat that this game has, this could be a lot of fun. But what I think might be a challenge here is how many people actually get to participate in the wars. So once a war is declared on a territory, there'll be 2 participating guilds known as companies that hand-pick players who get to fight. The way the system is structured sounds like a lot of people could get left out, and I think that's one of the 2 big questions. Who gets to PvP? With them removing the open world PvP and now siloing everyone to really focus on these 50 versus 50 territory controls, and participants having to be approved by company governors, guild leaders basically, a lot of solo players I think are going to get left in the dust. And I gotta be honest, I feel like with a lot of MMOs or survival games, so there's lots of people who play solo. Or forget about solo players, just what about the small guilds, the small companies in this game? How often are they gonna really get to participate in these territory control battles? Say they had this territory control stuff that you just, like in many other MMOs, you queue up for. And then when a spot opens up and the battle begins, you're allowed to join it. Having to get handpicked really most likely means that a lot of people are just totally gonna get left behind. And I could see that being a big problem if that is where our PvP in New World is entirely focused, in addition to the open world opt-in system. I'm just a little concerned with the way that it's structured and how we know the PvP wars are happening right now, if many people are really gonna get to participate. So those are the concerns with the PvP, but there's also concerns with the PvE, namely, is there gonna be enough? As far as we know right now, the basic loop of PvE in this game will work like this. You'll go out into the world, doing quests, killing enemies, all the while collecting resources allowing you to craft gear. Now, there's gonna be things like world bosses that require groups of players to take down, but we know that the game isn't gonna have the traditional MMO endgame PvE content. There won't be dungeons and raids, we do know about the open world bosses, and there's also gonna be the PvE invasions. This is where hordes of AI enemies will be attacking player forts and we have to try to defend it, otherwise they could potentially like overrun the location. There's also gonna be the corruption in the world. Corruption will take over parts of New World's island, and this is said to also offer some more difficult PvE challenges. So the real question is, will the invasions, the world bosses, and the corruption be enough of a hook to keep the PvE players continuously coming back? Now, the final part that on the article that I want to talk about is the potential shift in direction again when it comes to the PvP system. So the article does touch on the shift in direction that happened from the alpha to the current version, saying, back in alpha from October 2018 until June 2019, New World was a fully open PvP game. This meant that you could be attacked and murdered pretty much anywhere and would lose the gear on your corpse, similar to Ultima Online or Darkfall. This resulted in lots of griefing and player killing, which drove off players out of annoyance and fear. But if you pay attention to the vocal group of fans who wanted open PvP at all times, like it was in the alpha, many many are extremely unhappy with the new direction. But apparently the article says Amazon isn't resigned to the new model and would consider bringing some features back. Game director Scott Lane said, "We will always consider bringing things back. We are set on launching our alphas and betas this way and seeing what happens." So basically he's saying, hey, we're gonna do another round of alpha and beta testing, and if people are unhappy with the new opt-in system, we might change it back. I mean, it's pretty clear here that they're aware of the portion of the community who is unhappy with the removal of open world full loot PvP. Hell, anyone who's closely following New World couldn't possibly avoid it. The forums, Reddit, social media, basically anytime this game it comes up, there's a cascade of comments mentioning how they're unhappy with the change in direction. I think at the very least, Amazon should just consider offering separate servers. Now, the article did touch on this, saying, "What we want is a world where they, the PvP and PvE players, could coexist," says Lane. "We want players to play. We think it's a really special world and really fun. So we're trying to create a way we can do that. We have options. We could do servers. Like we said, we could do PvP areas, but what I don't want to do is exclude people from content." I get the idea that they don't want to split up the player base, but I feel like with the planned server sizes of roughly 1,000 players, giving people the option to choose, that seems like the obvious answer. It really does. And I hope that ultimately they decide to do this. I don't know, I guess my concern here is that we end up with like another Anthem situation where this game comes out, there's a lot of major decisions in terms of structure and the type of gameplay experience it's delivering that are shifting and changing just before launch, and then they just come out and it's not enough of anything. Like I said, I think there's some big concerns with how the PvP system is structured. This idea that the major tentpole of this game's PvP, these 50 versus 50 wars, has a system where you have to get hand selected to participate. I don't see how that couldn't be a problem with players on servers just getting completely excluded from a lot of the battles. Unless there are just so many battles taking place all over the place, it couldn't possibly be just one guild and one guild leader controlling who gets to fight in all of them. Maybe that's how it ends up. I feel like there's clearly something I'm missing, because if it's really the case, people will just be excluded. And again, on the PvE side of things, they're coming in pretty hot with trying to add content. They're not going to have that traditional end game of the dungeons and raids that we see in a lot of MMOs, and that leaves me concerned that it's going to be lacking that carrot on a stick that keeps people, the PvE players, engaged over a long term. You need that gear progression, just something for players to work towards. That's really, in loot games, the PvE players, that's really what they strive for. I realize it might be a tad dramatic to say that I think it might be good to delay this game, but you know, we've seen so many games come out and have some major questions and concerns prior to launch. And again, I say this hoping that everything goes great. I want New World to be good. I want every game that I'm looking forward to be good, but it doesn't always work out that way. And sometimes games come out and they feel half-baked and they feel unfinished and they feel like they could use more time. And I feel like Amazon probably has the money. If they wanted to take another 6 months and really solidify this game and really drive down a singular focus and work towards delivering their vision of whatever they want this game to be. I don't know. I'm not a game developer. It's really complicated. From what I understand, this kind of stuff happens all the time. It's just us, the players, don't always hear about these last minute changes or these uncertainties about what the game should focus on. It's always a weird thing, like talking about games and what I think or hope games should be, not being a game developer. Because I could imagine if I was a game developer and I saw someone like me being like, you guys need to delay your game. You don't even know what you're trying to focus on. What's wrong? You know, your game might fail if it doesn't have X, Y, and Z. If I was on the other side, I could totally see myself being like, look at this asshole. He hasn't even played this game, you know? And I get it. That's fair criticism. But I've played a lot of games, and I've seen a lot of games and followed games throughout their development to kind of see patterns and things that raise some red flags. And I guess that's just where I'm coming from. And again, at the end of the day, any criticism or concern that I have when I talk about games prior to them coming out, it is with the best of intentions because I want the games to be good. I don't want any game to fail. I wish every game that ever launched was amazing and I loved playing it, but it doesn't always work that way. And it's a competitive industry. And this is Amazon's first game. I hope they can really pull this thing together. And I'm looking forward to playing the game. I say all of this without even playing the game. There's people out there playing the alpha right now. And I don't know, what do they think? I guess they can't talk about it though because there's an NDA, so I don't know. Please be good, New World, please.